I was trying to be kind of calm and low key.
Oh, you can be whatever you'd like to be, but it doesn't even matter because I just feel such joy. You're just radiating and it's bringing me life because it's
Oh,
only
good.
10 a.m. Are
Okay.
you on the East Coast?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Oh,
in
I've been up
Phoenix.
for hours. I could
Okay.
be. Yeah.
My mom keeps, it was so funny. My mom and I chat about, when I told her I was talking with you this morning, she was like, she couldn't even, she didn't have words. And I heard your name all like in my, I won't say my young years, but like my teenage years,
No, you're
maybe.
probably the age of my daughter. I get it.
I'm 53.
No.
I don't
Okay.
say
No,
that.
my daughter's 48.
Oh, I love you even more now. Okay. Cause you didn't say like, my daughter's 72 and you
No.
seem to be about
No.
that would have been rough. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
hang up on you, Joyce, but that would have been rough.
So where are you coming
Yeah.
to me from, Elizabeth?
I am coming to you from outside Phoenix.
Oh, great.
Yes, where it's hotter than blazes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's only 10 a.m. So I'm in this phase of life where my body doesn't know, it doesn't understand time, like.
You just need to come to Lake Atitlán. That's all.
Is that where
Or
you are right now?
no, I'm in New
Okay.
Hampshire, but I'm
Okay.
often I make a point of being next to bodies of water at all times
At
if I
all times.
possibly can. Well, yeah, pretty much. And it's also never really hot here. It's just kind of
Oh.
yeah. Yeah, it's just
But
nice.
that's my kind of place. Now, is it humid? I grew up in Delaware, but I've never been to New Hampshire. Can you believe it?
Yeah, you need to fix that.
I know.
No, it's not particularly humid either.
Okay. Okay. That might be the place for me then. This might have done a
And
lot of different.
Guatemala, definitely not humid. Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you, like, since you brought it up, Guatemala, this is so interesting to me. My youngest daughter is from Ethiopia.
Oh,
But so when we started the adoption process, we started with Guatemala.
then they closed adoption.
And then they closed. And so Lake Atitlán is familiar to me. I have no idea if I'm saying that correctly.
You are.
My mom and I were going to travel down there and we never did because.
Great idea. Well, many years ago, 26 years ago, I went to Lake Atitlán. I'd actually been before then when I was 19. And I'd never forgotten that place. But I didn't go again until 26 years ago, when I went down to visit my daughter who was studying Spanish. And the place just stabbed my heart as it did when I was 19. And I said, "Oh, Audrey, you're so lucky that you got to live here." She was studying Spanish. And she said, "Mom, what's keeping you?" And I realized nothing. I was divorced. My youngest child had left home. I can do my work wherever I have a laptop, and I had my laptop. So I cashed in my ticket and I stayed, and I rented a little house on the shores of this indescribably beautiful lake, surrounded by volcanoes, with not a high rise in sight, and lived very simply, writing a book, actually. It was my novel, The Usual Rules. And swam great distance every day. Had no cell phone, no internet. I was alone and very happy. And then one day I swam past this beautiful piece of wild land right on the shores of the lake with a sign, "Se vende," for sale. And I had no business buying land in Guatemala, but it didn't cost that much in those days. And so I bought it. And that was for many years my little writing escape. It's where I went to write my books or revise my books. But it was such an inspiring place that I started hosting memoir retreats just for women there. And I've been doing that for over 25 years now. I've hosted well over 1,000 women. Now I do more than one, but I used to do one a year. And then people started writing to me to say, "We'd love to come to Guatemala and we'd love to stay at your place," which is pretty beautiful. Now it's a hotel retreat center with, a yoga platform and massage tent and all kinds of great things, wonderful food. But it started out this little adobe house. And so I now also host, this is getting to you and your mom at last. I host gatherings for people who might not want to come and work with me on memoir. They might just want to come to Guatemala to Lake Atitlán, to my house in particular.
Really?
And I am the host, and we have, excursions to markets and shamans and cacao ceremonies, but we also just have really great community among women.
Yeah.
That one's called Life by the Lake. So anyway, that was a little plug for.
I love that.
Like, and as I don't know if you have read my novel, The Bird Hotel, but
I have not.
which is not the one that we're, I guess, mostly focusing on, somewhat
We
focusing on.
can focus on. I mean, are there 20
Well,
now?
when you're talking to somebody who's been writing as long as I have, there are many things we can talk about. But during the pandemic, I lived at my place in Guatemala, which was a great decision.
Yeah.
That's really when I turned it into a hotel and retreat center just to give jobs to men and women. But I wrote a novel that was set basically in a Mayan indigenous village that I never said it was Guatemala, but it pretty much looked like my village. And that book has become a sort of quiet success story among readers. It's always a book club favorite, and it tells this somewhat fantastical story of a woman who's not me, who's known a great tragedy in her life and finds herself, gets on a bus, doesn't really care if she lives or dies, and ends up in this little village where she's tasked with running a hotel that's kind of falling apart. And she builds the hotel, she rebuilds the hotel, she brings the hotel back to life, and in the process brings herself back to life. And in many ways, that part is me, that I have this labor of love of hosting mostly women at my home on the shores of this gorgeous lake, and trying very hard to convince them to dive into the water, even if they think they don't want to. They always are glad when they did.
Yeah.
Anyway, and right
it.
now I'm actually in New Hampshire working on the sequel to The Bird Hotel.
Oh, okay.
But in fact, my most recent book that's out was just published a week ago. Actually,
I know.
A week ago
eight
yesterday.
Days, right?
A very different book.
Well, I am,
but also set on a body of water, also set on a lake in Wonderland. There it is.
Here it is. If people are watching, if everyone's listening, I'm holding it up. Joyce, okay, so I started it 2 days ago. I'm on like page 58. I will be finished no later than Saturday.
That's my goal, is to make it so you just can't put this book down.
I can't. Like last night when I was reading it, it was probably 11:30 at night, which is well past my supposed bedtime, but it's not past my body's decision. Like my body doesn't listen anymore is kind of where we're at with this. Yeah. And so I couldn't stop. The chapters are brief. It just keeps going, and my eyes started glazing over, and I was like, I have to stop because I'm falling asleep reading it. I have been thinking about this conversation with you ever since I heard from Katie. But my goal with conversations, especially with somebody like you who's been doing this for so long, is let me find a question. Let me not ask Joyce the same question that thousands of people have been asking her.
Already we've gone to completely different territory.
Okay,
Elizabeth.
well, good. Let's stay on that path, because that's what I'm.
But of course, I'm curious to know what you think about this book. I mean, you're not going to say you hated it, but because maybe you have a daughter about the age of the central character.
So almost. So my oldest is almost 27. So she's a little older than the central character.
Oh, a lot. I mean, this girl is 14, so it's a totally different life moment.
Oh, she is 14 when she first goes to the lake, right? When she first goes to be the
mother's helper.
Yeah, the mother's helper. Yeah.
Just in that age. I mean, you're dealing with the opposite transition, I guess. But she's just entering into that moment. And so she's neither child nor woman. Doesn't know who she is. She's dealing with her body and sexuality. And what does it mean to be, she's looking for a family too. Her family is
clearly.
Yeah. And she comes to this she's hired to be the mother's helper for this wealthy family. The father was the best friend of
Her
her
father,
father
right? Yeah.
back in the old neighborhood before he married the rich woman. And he exemplifies everything that her father is not.
Right.
And so she idealizes, she's basically gone to paradise. The house is called Wonderland.
Wonderland, right.
And of course, I'm not just going to let you spend 300 and some pages hearing about her wonderful summer. There have to be problems, and there are.
And they're already the inklings of problems, right? Because you work it in really quite masterfully. I mean, it's like I think one of the things that you are known for is your uncanny ability to take what is like I don't want to say a common challenge, but a mainstream challenge that so many, specifically women, can relate to and put it on the page. It may be a different character, it may be a different place and time, it may be a different issue, but like the feeling is there. So this feeling of like, where do I belong?
I've been a writer all my life, of course.
Yeah.
I've done this a long time. And I think I've been an outsider all my life in many ways. And I think, most writers are an observer. But I'm also very connected to my own adolescent self. I'm 72 years old, but I go back to adolescence again and again in my novels. Not every time, but this is not the first novel that's had a young person at its center. And I think it's because it is a time of life that shapes us forever. And that's part of what the book is about. The narrator's voice, actually, in the book, as you know, is not a 14-year-old girl. It's the woman 30 years later that she becomes.
Right. So do you think there's, when you're going back and writing from that adolescent space, is there a part of you that's maybe still trying to work out some stuff from your own adolescence, or do you just have such a reverence?
I certainly don't regard writing my books, whether memoir or fiction, as my therapy, my catharsis, my therapy. And I sort of think it's important for a writer to have resolved certain things before she writes. For me, writing a book is always an act of discovery. And that's not true for everybody. There are writers who have it very, very clearly planned out, and wonderful writers. I did an event last night with Jodi Picoult, and she was talking about the process of outlining for her, which the outline is so extensive that when she gets to the writing, half the work has been done. That's not me. I want to discover things as I'm writing and let my characters take me on a trip. And I might not entirely know what that trip is going to be myself, but one thing I know is who they are. I'm very clear on what their obsessions are, what their passions are, what their fears are, their greatest vulnerabilities, what they want, what they yearn for. And to me, that's the most organic way of creating a story. That story should come out of character. Not the opposite. I'm going to think of a plot and then I'll plug some people into it. But so to circle back to your question, Elizabeth, no, I don't think I was working out unresolved stuff from my teen life. I've been fortunate enough to be a writer so long that I get to spend my days thinking about what it means. And as you may know, I go back and forth between memoir and fiction. I've published at this point much more fiction. This is my 14th novel, but I've spent a lot of time and done a lot of work looking at my own very particular young experiences. And they inform my writing, but I think I have a fair amount of clarity about them at this point.
Okay. So I'm curious when you say that, because I work with a lot of memoir writers, and the majority of the authors with whom I work are writing memoir or nonfiction. Occasionally there's some fiction, but the majority is memoir and nonfiction. And so what's interesting, I share the belief that certainly don't publish something that you haven't worked through sufficiently enough that you can confidently put it on the page and etc. But what I find is that many times people do use their writing as a catharsis or so a lot of what hits the page first will never make it to print because it just has to. How do you?
Well, and that's one of the things that I love to work with women on at my workshops, that it's important to go through the process of, sort of feeling one's pain. But then for me, it's also important to apply the tools and the disciplines of good storytelling to what may be, a hugely painful, emotional experience. And if you do it while you're still in the throes of it, you're not standing on solid ground,
right.
which means different things for different people. I published a memoir at home in the world, a story for which I was sort of canceled before the term canceled existed. It was a story, my relationship at age 18 with a very famous, revered writer, J.D. Salinger, who sought me out on the basis of something of mine that he'd written. And the book was published in 1998. It's not, this is not a story of ancient history. The person who was described in reviews again and again as the predator was me, for writing the book, for telling that story. That wouldn't happen now, but this was, not even 30 years ago. And that's really, it took me 25 years to tell that story because I subscribed to the view myself that he was this important, spiritually elevated man who deserved my silence. And really, the biggest motivating force for me in working with women on the telling of their stories, whether or not they ever want to publish them. It's okay if they don't. I don't regard publication as the bar, is because I know what happened to me when I told my story. And I basically, the entire literary world, with a handful of exceptions, almost every literary critic coast to coast, it told me that I had no right to tell that story. So that was a story that took 25 years. And had I written it sooner, well, I wouldn't have, because I was told not to write it and I obeyed. But I didn't understand what that story was for a very long time. The next memoir was a book called The Best of Us, about finding and losing my very good second husband, Jim, who I met in my late 50s. And a year after we were married, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and died. And that book really is a love story. I started writing that book the night Jim died, which could sound like a sort of a, chilling thing to say. Your husband died, you open up your laptop. But for me, that was the most natural thing to do, to tell that story. And it's really not a cancer story. It's a love story. So there is no timetable for one's processing of one's story, but it needs to be processed for sure.
Oh, for sure. Agreed.
I don't even like the word process. It sounds like sausage or something.
It sounds very sterile.
Before we write, we need to understand what it is what the story is that we're telling.
Yeah. So then what's your perspective on the difference between owning your story, your perspective of something, and sharing it versus what you were hearing, which was you don't have the right?
Oh, well, this is everything that I have to really work on with the women who come to my workshops, because men don't ask this question, but the biggest question that women will say is, how do I how do I tell an honest story about my life without hurting people, my
Yes.
husband, my children, my mother? That's what women do, is protect
Yes.
other people. And what I say to them, and of course, the children are in another category. Children are, I you only know all the stories I tell. You don't know the stories I don't tell. But I feel very protective of children's stories. But we do not live in a vacuum on this planet, and we bump into each other. We love each other. We hurt each other. We are changed by each other. So, to me, every woman deserves the right to tell the story that she has lived.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And yet it is so, it feels so heavy and I think that's so interesting that you said, because how many men have written, I mean, women are the primary memoir writers, right? But when men write from that lens, it's not nearly, not even close.
Well, they're celebrated, first of all. Oh my
Exactly.
God.
Right.
Look what he did, in the
They're
same way
so
that
brave.
if you see a man carrying a baby, people just
Oh,
all over him,
right. Right.
and good for him, but,
Right.
good for us all. So yeah. Um, so I feel,
Do you feel like we are having any growth in all of that? Like even if you confine it just to the literary, like to the book industry, do you, from the past 25 years, do you feel like we're making strides in that area?
oh, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, I do. And it's nice to locate an area where things are getting better.
Yeah.
They're not in the world of climate change, not in, as far as I'm concerned, in what's going on in the policy of our government, but what we're doing out in the world. But yeah, I think after my husband died, I had dropped out of Yale when I was 18. I had a
I was
full
going to talk to you
scholarship,
about.
and I left.
Yeah.
I don't hang around thinking about regrets too often, but this is a regret. I gave up my full scholarship to Yale to go move in with Salinger. And I didn't think I'd ever go back to college. I got busy working and then supporting a family and then making sure that my children got to go to college. But after Jim died, when I knew I needed to restore myself after a pretty brutal 2-year period, I went back to Yale at the age of 65. And I didn't do it to get a degree. I really, I did it to just sort of nourish myself with new ideas, to study things I'd never gotten to study before. But probably the best part of going back to Yale was, I mean, I took some great classes, but were my fellow students, very young, young women and men.
Yeah.
And the young women, when they heard, they'd ask me, why did you drop out of Yale? So the story came out. I might as well have said, a Martian landed. It was so unimaginable to them, even though
Did
I
they
knew.
know who J.D. Salinger was? Did they even know
Sure.
that?
Oh,
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
They did. They did. But it was any man. It was, just, and the truth is I was older than their mothers. I was probably closer to their grandmother's age. So even their mothers had had a different story than my generation's women.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy to say that they were, appropriately shocked that that would have happened.
Well put. What did you go back to get the degree in?
As I said, the degree was so not the point.
It
I mean,
wasn't.
I did say, I think, when people said, "What's your major?" I was going to be an art major.
Okay.
But I've always loved to draw and paint. But no, I just wanted to learn. I just wanted to
Oh, I love
read
that.
and study.
Yeah.
I acted in a play. I learned how to row. I I didn't pretend that I was 18 years old again.
Yeah.
That ship had sailed and sunk. But but I had a fabulous experience.
Yeah.
And it wasn't cheap, and I couldn't do my work while I was there. And then COVID came. So for all those reasons, I left. But I got 2.5 great years of
Oh, I
Yale
love this.
between the ages of 65 and 67. Yeah.
I just saw a story yesterday. I don't remember. Of course, it was on Instagram, but I don't remember how it showed up in my feed of a woman. She's 72 and
Mhm.
she's just now starting her residency for medical school.
Wow.
So she went back in her late 60s. She
Yeah.
had always had a dream of being a doctor.
Mhm.
And she's just now starting her residency. And I thought, all right, Elizabeth, you cannot complain about being tired at all because
Yeah.
this was starting a
I
residency
wonder
at
if this
72.
means that I can still become a ballerina.
Of course it does. My best friend is she's a little bit younger than I am. She's just 50, just a baby over there.
Yeah.
And she just started taking ballet.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the reasons why I feel so much energy and joy in my life, it's not that I haven't known great sorrow, I have, is because I'm doing work I love and I'm doing new things. To sort of circle around to the new book, I very deliberately, when I start a new book, I think about a story that's not like any story I've told. I mentioned that, once again, I'm with a teenage character, but I like to go to new territory and not just in my writing, but in my life. So yeah.
I'm curious. I feel like at least when I read about you, the word reinvent keeps coming up. And I'm curious how you feel about that word because
I don't think of myself so much as reinventing. I do think of myself as resilient.
Yeah.
I'm still me. It's more
right.
that I keep on popping up. That toy, I don't even know if they have them anymore, but it's like an inflatable clown and you punch it, goes down and it pops back up again. That's kind of me. And I don't think it's possible to get to this age without having big losses.
Yeah.
And the question is not how do we avoid them, but how do we deal with them when they come? And what I choose to do is embrace what I have and what remains and move forward. And sometimes, of course, it's easier said than done. And I recognize the moments when it's not possible. I find myself, I've watched a number of extended video interviews with, gosh, I should remember her name. I know the name of her son Hirsch, who was killed on October 7th, but an Israeli mother who really has been going around with enormous strength and power. And this has nothing to do with the politics of Israel-Palestine. This is about mothers and loss. And it's quite separate to me from, questions about policy and, what we should be doing in that part of the world. But she really speaks about not being ever able to be, that she is broken forever. And that's, I get it. And I actually think it's a very brave thing to give voice to. And I've never lost a child. I've had many losses, but so I will just speak to, the losses and struggles that I have known and say that for me, the best way to move forward is to honor the struggle. That's really what The Best of Us was about, to honor the struggle. Not simply to just say, my husband is dead, my heart is broken, but let us look at this and see what we can take from it. In the case of the new novel, it's a very hard story. It's I hope it's also just sort of a gripping, page turning story, but this is not a happily ever after kind of story. I won't give away anything, but some very painful things are going to happen in this book. But I always look for some element of redemption. I don't ever want to leave a reader on the last page of a book of mine feeling, well, life sucks. Thank that
you.
To me is not a satisfying book. And I'm also a realist. I mean, I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist. So I'm not going to pretend that things tie up neatly. They don't. But I will probably, for as many different kinds of characters as I've written over the 53 years now that I've been publishing books, one kind of character I'll probably never write is an utterly, a person without hope or capacity for joy. I guess I can imagine such a character. I've known such people,
Yeah.
but I don't feel that it's very helpful to give them to you. So yeah.
Do you ever have moments, even still, when you are writing and you feel stuck? Like, do you ever feel like,
Well, I wouldn't use the word
okay,
stuck, Elizabeth.
okay,
What I will say is I think, whoa, what's she going to do now? But
oh,
that's not a stuck thing. It's like,
yeah, it's a
I'm gonna,
curiosity,
yeah.
like
And
a,
then I'll probably, dive in the lake and take a long swim and be thinking about it. Um, but I'm moving forward. I'm moving
yeah,
through it. I don't wake up in the morning and think, I don't have a thought in my head. I have, it's almost the reverse. Like, oh, there's so much. How do I
yeah,
focus in?
yeah.
One of the things I discovered when I went back to college, and it's funny that I didn't know this before, but this speaks to my generation. I went back to college and I was thinking, oh, finally, I'll read all the books that I never got around to reading because I was not a very well-read person. I was like always working, supporting my family, taking care
Really?
of
Okay.
children. This is, I didn't have that interlude at college to sort of read everything and study and think.
Uh-huh.
And, I was going. And so then I go to college and I take first semester back at college, age 65. I take a French class. I love languages. And it was a mid-level French. And I kind of, was feeling pretty good about my French. I'm a good French speaker and I was really excited. It was a very intensive every day, 5 days a week class.
Mhm.
And then we were going to have our very first exam. I hadn't had an exam in 47 years. So I studied and I stayed up, as late as I can, maybe like 10:30, that's the limit for me, studying. And I went in and took my test and had my sharpened pencils and,
Yeah.
was feeling pretty good about my results. And the next day I went back to class and my teacher, um, handed back the exams to everybody but me. And she called me up to the front of the room after everybody had left. And she said, I need to speak with you. And then she handed me my French exam, on the front of which was a grade I had never seen, D minus. And she said something so brilliantly perceptive. She said, have you ever been tested for learning differences? And of course, nobody my age group was. You were probably right on the cusp.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
probably got it,
Yep.
but people my age group did not. And the minute she said it, the wheels began to spin and everything in my life, including how hard it was for me to read, made sense. So
Okay.
then I was at Yale and I got this really super duper, very high level testing. And I had it wasn't dyslexia. It's not dyslexia.
Mhm.
I can barely read. I read in the 17th percentile, not 17th percentile of Yale students, 17th percentile nationwide. And it is that there's just so much kind of coming in at me. Um,
Okay.
and you'd think this might be bad news. It actually was good news because
Okay.
it kind of explained so much to me. And I was given a prescription for the drugs that one takes. I never took any of them.
Mhm.
And I don't really want to because this is who I am. And I actually have over the years developed all kinds of, ways that I deal with being
Mhm.
me. Um, but it's also my superpower. And I think it's why I write the way I do. That I'm, the flip side of ADHD
Yeah.
is intense hyper focus, as you
Yeah.
may know. If you know anybody who has it, I won't say suffers from it, but,
Right.
and it's, definitely there are challenges in my life
Mhm.
that I, connect to that. I'm not making it as an excuse for everything, that I can't do or, struggle with. But but it also gives me the capacity to sit at this desk and completely immerse myself in my characters and my world. I have to be interested. I would be lousy. I wouldn't do very well in the military, I don't think. I'm not a good rule follower. And see my house, I just, I have to be doing something I love, and then I will really do it. Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting to me, I think I was on the cusp of all these new diagnoses,
Ah,
but I
age
was
53. Yeah, you would be.
yeah, but like I think I was actually out of college before this all came to be. I think I had
Mhm,
started even having kids before it.
mhm.
Now my kids' generation, it's all the rage. Everybody has everything and
Yes,
they're coming up with
of
something
course.
new every day. And that's
Yeah.
a whole separate conversation. But it is interesting. I love what you're saying about this is just who you are. This is how
Mhm,
your brain processes what's going on around you and the thoughts in your brain and et cetera, as opposed to making it something, see the air quotes, wrong with you.
mhm. Yeah,
But I do think there are a lot of people my age and older who are like, oh, now that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. And it has, sometimes I'll get a letter from a reader
Uh-huh.
who says, I've never been much of a reader and I have trouble with books. I love books, but I have trouble reading, but I can always read your books.
Oh,
And I have to say, it's not because my books are particularly like, juvenile, or,
no, no, no.
I write with clarity for sure. And, but I think there's plenty of complexity there. But I often think, I bet that person has
Hmm.
ADHD. And I think I have a particular style that cuts through
Hmm.
all the stuff. You mentioned short chapters. I
Hmm.
write short chapters and I write the book I want to read, basically. I am my own first reader.
Yeah.
And I write first, I don't write
Mhm.
thinking like, oh, what's selling this year? Or, I want to be like this writer
Right.
or that. I write to say, what's the story I would really love to hear?
Yeah. Well, it's got me thinking because I've never been diagnosed, but I'm certain I am as close to certain without a diagnosis as I can be that I have ADHD, but I don't that's just a thing, right? And it
Yeah.
makes me think about why this book in Wonderland, and then also there was one I finished recently, The Half-Life by Rachel Beanland, and it
Mm,
is also equally short chapters, and I just couldn't stop.
mm.
The other thing that you do that works so well for my brain, if that's what it is you have a way of making your characters very clear very quickly without a lot of preamble.
You know what I always imagine, Elizabeth, when I sit down to write, I won't even say pretend. I just picture myself making a movie for you that will play in your head. And I think, born in another era, I might have wanted to be a filmmaker. Now it's,
Yeah.
so easy well, it's not easy to be a good filmmaker, but, the technology is at a different
Sure.
level. But I get to be the screenwriter, of course, the director, of course, the movie star. I'm the sound person. I'm the lighting person. I'm the editing person. And I'm putting together this experience that you will have in your head. And
Mhm.
it's not a very wordy one.
No.
Movies don't have captions unless there's subtitles. You see, you look at the actor, and if he or she or they is doing their job, you will know who they are. And that's my goal as a writer, that I don't explain a whole lot. I give you a scene, and
Mhm.
I think you're going to figure it out. I've Publishing as long as I have has given me huge respect for the intelligence and perception of readers to get it. Yeah.
But I want to give you some. It is not easy because on the screen, when we're watching it on the screen, we have other senses that we can see it, we can hear it,
Yes.
all those
Yeah.
things. In a book, it is not an easy thing to be able to create that moving picture in your reader's mind
Yeah.
when the only thing they have to rely on is words.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't have words for how good at that you are. I mean, it's just, it really is remarkable.
Well, thank you. It's really a great joy in my life to share. I grew up feeling, as I mentioned, like an outsider, and I was a secret keeper. I grew up in an alcoholic family. That's, the definition of secret keeper. I was not keeping a shameful secret of my own. I was keeping my father's secret.
Yeah.
We never talked about the fact that he got drunk every night. And so my first survival tool was to keep myself concealed. And what I've come to is exactly the opposite, that I believe in putting out there what actually happened and trusting the reader to get it, for me, it makes me feel so not alone to know that, I'm not, that there are other people who, who went through these feelings. Don't talk about them. I think I'm sort of uniquely positioned to talk about things other people do not talk about. And that's fine that they don't. But I was kind of worried, wasn't hugely worried, because at this point in my life, I just do what I do. And that's one of the gifts that comes. But the girl who's at the center of this book, as you will see, she's kind of obsessed with, she's trying to figure out sex. This is one of the things going on. Only one going on. And it turns out the husband, I'm giving no spoilers here, is having an affair, and she's sort of devastated to see that this man she so admired is doing something so not cool. This is not a book about a pedophile, incidentally. It's not a book about a creepy relationship between the dad and the babysitter.
Right.
Those happen, but this is not that. And so she does all these kind of weird things, some of which I did. Like, I was a big time babysitter. That's how I got through my teens. And when the children went to bed, I might, try on the wife's clothes, or, look in the drawers and see the husband's condoms or something. And I thought, oh God, am I really going too far this time? Are people going to think, what? Who is this? And, I have some older readers. I thought, ooh, is this kind of, no, they're totally on board. They say, me too.
Yeah,
I did that too. I tried. Didn't you try on her underwear? Yeah.
You did?
There was a very beautiful slip one time. Yes, that I had to try. Because I didn't have a slip like that. Yeah.
This is so, it creates such a space for people to feel seen. And what I think is so remarkable about that, especially with older readers, which you mentioned, is they also grew up in a time when there's certain things you don't talk about. Like, my kids, oh my God, I feel like nothing is off limits for them. They talk about, they think it, they say it. Sometimes I'm like, did you need to say that even unto yourself out loud? Like, did that need to come out? But I know, like, my mom's 80. So my mom's generation, there were things that they just didn't talk about. And that was the rule. And so
I've been called, I remember there was an article that ran about me in the Atlantic some years ago that called me the queen of oversharing. And first of all, I don't know what undersharing is, or what like the appropriate level of sharing is, but my way of getting through life is to talk about stuff. And you don't have to look further than the household that I grew up in to know where that came from. We didn't. We did talk about, politics, books, art, music, religion, but sex even, but not what was happening in our house every day, that my father was drinking. And that was very scary. So I have, for whatever odd reason, maybe a lot because of what I lived through as a child, and then when I was basically shut down at age 44, she shouldn't tell that story. I am allergic to secret keeping. I mean, I'll keep, if a friend says, you must never tell this, I never will. Just last night, a friend told me a story. She said, that's in confidence. Absolutely. There was no worry there. But I do believe in shining a light on the things that are scary. And the girl in this book is the husband is having an affair and she adores the husband, but she's also feeling betrayed. The wife is betrayed sexually, but she thought the husband was going to be paying attention to her and talking to her because he was that kind of a guy at the beginning of, the summer. And now he's very distracted as, a person having an affair can be.
Would be, yeah.
And so she feels betrayed by him and the mother enlists her as her detective, basically. There's something almost comic about it. She doesn't even drive, but she's got a bicycle. And she's supposed to follow the guy and the lover or, stake out places where they might be having their assignations. And she has a little notebook and a little tape recorder and that's her job. And it basically is she's trying to figure out life, in a very unlikely setting. This is not,
And she doesn't realize that's what she's doing. But it's so interesting to write. It's got to be. I don't know. I don't think I could do it. So to write from the perspective of a character who's trying to figure it out, but doesn't know she's trying to figure it out.
Yes.
Where you
and of course the perspective that I adopted for this, it's always a question, who's my narrator? And my narrator is not a 14-year-old girl.
Right.
My narrator is a woman in her 50s.
Right.
Who's looking back over an experience that utterly changed her life.
Yeah.
And devastated her at the time. Not just the affair, but things that you haven't seen yet.
Gotten to yet. Yeah, don't spoil it. I'm very excited.
No, will not do. My goal is that you read this book
in 2 days. It's going to happen. And I'm not a fast reader. I think for many reasons, probably also including the aforementioned one where, focus is not my strong suit.
Yeah.
So,
if you're on page 58, then you're reading the way I read. Slowly, carefully. Yeah. And I appreciate that because if somebody reads, skim, they're missing out on a lot of things that, are very precious. But
yeah. I can't, I read slowly because I think I read slowly, but also to your point, I like to really absorb it. I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to just pick up the highlights and the Cliff's notes.
No, you're my kind of reader.
Like I know people who are in a book club, for example, and they'll get to the day before their meeting and they haven't read the book yet. And they're like, oh my God. And so they'll look up online, like the Cliff's notes. And I think, what is the point of being in the book? And that's not me judging them. That's me saying, I don't know what the point would be for me to be in a book club if I weren't going to really sink into it. So I don't read.
I'm right with you.
I just don't do it. Okay, so the last question I've been asking people lately is, what is your favorite word lately? Or do you have a favorite word? I'll let you answer it, but I have another one for you too.
Gosh, my favorite.
You just said one that's now my favorite word, assignation.
Assignation.
God, that's a great word. Also, you can use it. I like to use words in not the way that their actual definition. Yeah. So I feel like one of my favorite words is morass, which is, a swamp, but I like to call people a morass. And now with assignation, I feel like I could call someone like, what an assignation. I'm just thinking, it's just a great word.
The way my brain works, Elizabeth, I'm not very good at diving in and pulling something out.
I understand that.
So in Guatemala, we always end our week with a visit from a shaman, a really wonderful Mayan shaman who comes and builds a fire altar, and we have a fire ceremony. And there is a moment in the ceremony when each of us comes and offers a word to the fire, which is very beautiful fire. He's got all these stones and petals and wonderful smells, and we've smoked a big, thick, cheap cigar, and we've done all these things and candles. And so I think about, the word, I think the last time I did it, I always do it because it's always different. And I think the word that came was forgiveness, which is, it's not it's not a word that I choose because it has some interesting sound to it, but the concept is a very important one for me at this stage in my life, and probably differentiates my perspective at this stage of life from perspectives that I've had when I was younger. I I was so filled with wounds, among other things, and anger, bitterness. I was going to say a bad divorce. What's a good divorce? And when I was 35 and spent a lot of years being angry and, bitter and many things that, people go through. Um, and at this point in my life, I feel there is no time for anger, bitterness. I don't think it's good for my health, among other things. So I'll say forgiveness. Favorite word, forgiveness.
When you have this fire ceremony, are you giving the word to the fire, or is it just
You just say it. You say it.
okay?
Yeah. You don't write it down on a piece of paper, but
Okay.
you say it. It's a very powerful
It
ceremony.
sounds like it.
He's the real deal, Tomas. Sometimes people weep during the ceremony. It's always different people respond to it differently. Um, he does it in the Mayan language, but we have a translator.
Okay.
And I always leave it just sort of feeling
Lighter.
uplifted. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you've convinced me to go there.
Well, anybody who wants to join me there, you go to joycemaynard.com and you'll read all about it. Both the writing ones and the one that I call Life by the Lake.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, just a pleasure, Elizabeth.